Hi everyone, this is Hannah from Wonderful Woodlands, and today we're going to look at how to knit in the round. So to start with, you can see here I have 5 needles. You can knit in the round with either 4 or 5 needles, but I think it's a little bit easier to do with 5, so we're going to start with 5 today. And we're going to do a smaller cast on just to keep things simple, but the concept applies no matter how many stitches you're casting on. So we're gonna work across 4 needles, and then our 5th needle is gonna be our active knitting needle. So I'm gonna start today with 10 stitches per needle, and I'm gonna do a long tail cast on here. Let's see. I think that'll probably be long enough. So the first thing we're gonna do, if you missed our long tail cast on, you can go catch that in a different video. I'm not gonna tutorial step by step because I wanna keep moving here. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna cast on, I know I said 10 stitches per needle, but we're gonna cast on 12 stitches to our first needle. So we have 4 here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Then this is a little trick I do. I don't know if anybody else does this, but I do it because I think it's easiest. After I've cast on 12 stitches, I take my last 2 stitches and I slip them onto the next needle. I think it's way too hard to cast on without a couple stitches to kind of anchor the needle for you. So then we're gonna get 12 stitches on this needle. We're just gonna keep going. You can kind of pin this needle down. You're gonna get a chain of needles, but it's just the way it goes. You can kind of pin this down with your fingers. We already have 2 here. So we'll go 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I didn't mention, but this also works with a knit cast on method. So if you don't like the long tail cast on method, you're welcome to use a different method. And the way that we do a knit in the round is going to be exactly the same. So you can kind of choose your favorite cast on method here. Okay, now we have 2 needles, just kind of hold these out of the way. So we have 2 stitches here. We're going to go for 12 again. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then this is our last needle here. I feel like this is the hardest part, and it gets easier after we get everything cast on. So don't worry if it feels like you're holding a lot of needles. It's gonna get better, but that's okay, we'll get through it. This time we're only gonna cast on 10 needles because we don't have 2 needles that we don't have 2 stitches that we're gonna slide off at the end. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, now before we join these for working in the round, we want to just double count all of our stitches one more time. I cannot tell you how many times 1 or 2 of my needles are a stitch or 2 off, so you just always want to double check yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, this is where you want to set this up. If you get this set up right the first time, then you're not going to have to go back. This is where it can get twisted. So we're going to join our first end to our last end here. So this is the last stitch we cast on. This is the first. We're literally going to join them like it's called for working in the round, but we want to go through, let's get this over here, and make sure we don't have any twists in between any of our needles here, which we don't. So this looks good. Then we're going to pinch these 2 needles together here, and we are going to literally knit in the round. So we're going to join our last stitch to our first stitch. So I'm just going to knit to start with here. We're not going to do anything fancy. We want to find our longer tail here. I always like to make this first stitch really tight. It will get loose, which doesn't matter because on your second and third and fourth row, you'll keep it nice and tight, and that'll tighten up your end for you. But do one last check here. Make sure you don't have any twists at any of your corners. This looks good. And so we're just going to knit straight across this needle here. There's more opportunities when you knit in the round for your yarn to get stuck on the needle next to you, so just go slow at first, and as your fingers get comfortable with it, you'll pick up speed later. We are just doing a stockinette stitch right now, so we're just going to, all we're going to do are knit stitches. We'll keep it nice and easy. Okay, that's the end of our first needle. So now we're going to move to the next needle. We're going to give this a quarter turn, and we're going to keep going straight across this needle. So we'll go for a knit stitch here. Our yarn's already ready for us. Let me get a little more yarn. And then we're going to go across the back here. So we'll go knit, and we're just going to knit straight across this needle. And this is all you're going to do. I didn't put a stitch marker on today, but a lot of patterns are going to call for a stitch marker. I can usually tell where the end of my row is based on where my yarn tail is. And so sometimes I use that to keep track, but sometimes if you're decreasing stitches, it gets a little messy. There's the end of our second needle. Because you're going to want to keep track of how many rows you've done. So right now I've done 1 row on these 2 needles, but I have done 0 rows on these 2. So this yarn tail shows me where the end of my work is. But some people will also put a stitch marker down at the end so that you always know exactly which stitch was the beginning of the row and which was the end of the row. Okay, this is our third needle. Here we'll go all the way to the end of the round. You can use a circular needle to accomplish knitting in the round as well. I personally hate circular needles. I have tried them. I learned on double pointed needles, and this is the only thing I've ever used. So circular needles just don't work that great for me, but some people love them, and there's definitely nothing wrong with using them if that is something that you want to venture into. Okay, last one here. This is going to be the end of our round at the end of this needle. We'll do 1 more row of knit stitches. This is where it's going to get a little loose when you pull on this stitch. So after you knit this stitch, you're going to want to take your end and tighten up that bottom stitch a little bit. But after you get a couple more rows in, it's not going to be a big deal. So you see this is a little loose. It's totally no big deal. To go for our second row now, because we've done 1 full row, it's going to be the exact same thing. So we're just going to start off at the beginning here. That is my short end. There's my long end. And again, we're going to make this first stitch really nice and tight because that's going to help us to not have a gap in our work. So we'll just knit straight across, nothing fancy. And we're going to end today after this video, or after this row. We'll get to the end here. Okay. So now we've done 2 rows on this needle here. Oh, there we go. Okay, this first needle here has 2 rows, and all of these have 1 row. So